Welcome everyone to Matt on a Mission, the podcast where we explore important topics about faith and the Bible. I'm Matt.
And I'm Tim. Today, we're tackling a big question. Did Jesus actually say he was God? There's a lot of debate around this topic, and some people argue that Jesus never claimed to be God or the Son of God.
Exactly. Our source material notes that this claim that Jesus never claimed to be God is considered a lie. We're going to look at what the Gospels actually record Jesus saying about himself.
That's right. The notes we're using are based on a compilation of scriptures from the four Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Let's get into it.
Let's start with Matthew's Gospel. We see Jesus frequently referring to God as my Father, which suggests a very special relationship. In Matthew chapter 10, verses 32 through to 33, Jesus says he will confess before my Father who is in heaven, those who confess him, and deny those who deny him.
That describes the relationship of a father and his son. Then in chapter 11, verses 25 through 27, Jesus thanks his Father, Lord of heaven and earth, and states that all things have been delivered to him by his Father. This is a clear statement of his authority as God's Son. Again, in Matthew chapter 12, verse 50, Jesus makes the statement, my Father in heaven.
It's also important to look at what others say about Jesus, such as in Matthew chapter 16, verses 13 through 17, where Peter confesses, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus affirms this revelation comes from my Father who is in heaven.
Exactly. That recognition of Jesus as the Son of the living God is key. Moving on, in Matthew 21, verses 1 to 3, Jesus tells his disciples to bring him a donkey, saying, the Lord has need of them, which is another claim to his position and authority.
In Matthew chapter 26, we see Jesus' personal struggle. In verses 39 through to 42, Jesus prays to God, calling him, O my Father, expressing his dependence on the Father's will. Then, in verses 52 through to 53, he mentions that he could ask my Father for legions of angels, showing direct access to divine power.
In the same chapter, verses 63 to 64, the high priest asks Jesus a direct question. Tell us if you are the Christ, the Son of God. Jesus' response is, it is as you said. One translation says, thou hast said, which affirms the high priest's statement that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God.
And in Matthew chapter 27 and verse 43, we see Jesus mocked, with people saying, he said, I am the Son of God. And finally, in Matthew chapter 28 and verse 18, Jesus declares that all authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth, a massive claim of authority.
So, from the Gospel of Matthew, we see a lot of evidence that Jesus does claim a special relationship with God as his Father, and that others acknowledge him as the Son of God.
Let's move to Mark and Luke, where we see more significant declarations. In Mark chapter 14, verses 61 to 62, the high priest asks, are you the Christ, the Son of the Blessed? And Jesus responds with a simple, I am.
Yes, that is a powerful statement. Luke chapter 22, verse 70 is similar. When asked, are you then the Son of God? Jesus' answer was, you say it because I am. Again, this is a clear affirmation of his divine identity.
Now let's talk about the Gospel of John. This Gospel is full of Jesus' claims about his identity. In John chapter 4, verse 25 to 26, Jesus says to the woman at the well, I who speak to you am he, referring to the Messiah.
And in John chapter 5, verses 17 to 18, Jesus says, my Father has been working until now, and I have been working. This angered the Jews because Jesus was making himself equal with God by calling God his Father.
Absolutely. And in John chapter 6, verse 32 to 40, Jesus makes profound statements where he says, I am the bread of life, and that he came down from heaven to do the will of the Father.
Yes, and in John chapter 8, verse 42, Jesus says, I proceeded forth and came from God. This emphasizes his pre-existence and divine origin. Then in verse 58, Jesus declares, before Abraham was, I am, which recalls the divine name revealed to Moses at the burning bush. placing Jesus as the Lord at that place and time.
John chapter 9, verse 35 to 37 is also significant, where Jesus asks, "Do you believe in the Son of God?" and then reveals to the man that you have both seen him, and it is he who is talking with you.
And we must mention Jesus' statement in John 10:30, "I and my Father are one." Then the Jews tried to stone him for blasphemy, saying to him, "Because you, being a man, make yourself God."
And John chapter 10 continues with Jesus clarifying that he is indeed the Son of God when he says, "I am the Son of God." That is very direct and clear. In John chapter 11 and verse 4, Jesus also says that the purpose of Lazarus' sickness is that the Son of God may be glorified through it.
In John chapter 13, verses 13 to 14, Jesus states, "You call me teacher and Lord, and you say, well, for so I am," asserting both his authority and his divine nature.
In John chapter 16, verses 27 to 28, Jesus explains that he came forth from God. As we read on, we get to the prayer of Christ in John chapter 17, in verse 1 through to 5. Here Jesus asks the Father, "The hour has come. Glorify your Son, that your Son also may glorify you," and speaks of the glory which I had with you before the world was.
Finally, in John 19:7, the Jews acknowledge that, based on his statements, Jesus made himself the Son of God.
So as we see, from all of these verses, Jesus repeatedly claims to be God, or the Son of God, or acknowledges others' recognition of his divine nature. The evidence is really extensive.
Absolutely. Jesus declares he is God. He is the Son of God. He is the great I am. This is not a side issue but central to the Christian faith. It is a pillar of truth that every Christian needs to know and understand.
That's correct, Tim, and thank you so much for putting together all of your research and notes and insights into this podcast for our audiences. We really, really appreciate it. Thank you for joining us on Matt on a Mission. We hope this exploration has been helpful to you. This means now when somebody says to you, "Did Jesus say he was the Son of God?" you can say, "Yes, he did." It is written in the Bible many times in the Gospels alone, let alone other parts of the Bible. Of course, if you found this helpful, we'd love to see you again next week. And if you'd like some notes where we recorded all of these scriptures, make sure to check online. If you're listening with Pastor Francis on radio, you can send him a message via WhatsApp and he can forward those notes over to you also. And of course, be blessed, have a wonderful week, and remember, Jesus is Lord.